warmer spring weather this year has really brought the bugs out, and one in particular, the grasshoppers. We've seen so many grasshoppers showing up already, and it's time that we better get going, or else they're going to be taking over our whole yards and eating our gardens to pieces. So right now the grasshoppers are fairly small, but with time they will just get bigger and bigger and bigger until those big guys are really difficult to control. So there's a lot of different things we can do to try and keep our grasshoppers under control before they take over our yards. One of my favorites is actually a preventative repellent, and it's called Bug Blocker. It also comes in a granule. It's called Lawn Shield in the granule form, but it's made from cedar oil, and it actually smells really good. It smells like junipers, and so when you spray your yard, the whole yard just smells great. But the grasshoppers just absolutely hate the smell of the cedar oil, and so when they come into an area that's been treated with the cedar oil, either the granules or the liquid, they just want to leave. They want to go somewhere else. It just makes them so uncomfortable that they just feel like going somewhere else. So they'll send them over to your neighbor's house, which works really quite well in the garden. But if you want to treat a large area where all the grasshoppers are coming from, probably not going to be as effective, but great for using in the garden and also around your flowers to keep those grasshoppers from coming in and eating them to pieces. Got some very good insecticides that will knock the grasshoppers down really quickly. We've got the Liquid 7 from Fertilome, the Liquid Carbaryl, and we also have the High Yield Indoor Outdoor. Both very, very effective on grasshoppers. They both will last for a week to 2 weeks, depending on how strong you mix it. The indoor outdoor, this one right here, will actually last a little bit longer. In fact, I like to go into the vacant lot next door, or the empty field out back where the grasshoppers are coming from, especially when they're small, and use the indoor outdoor, and we'll spray kind of a perimeter around our property, do like a 20 or 30 foot wide band all the way around the property, and then go out into the areas where the grasshoppers are coming from, and then try and spray them where their feeding grounds are. If you can get those guys while they're little, it'll really save you a lot of work later on, because the grasshoppers are much easier to control when they're small than when they're larger. And an insecticide like the permethrin, the indoor outdoor, or the 7 will knock them down very quickly. You can spray, and within 5 to 10 minutes you'll see dead grasshoppers already. So you'll get very, very good control with both of these insecticides, and they're both safe to use in fruits and vegetables as well too. So not only do we have a natural way to repel them, but we've got a couple insecticides that'll really knock them down very quickly. Now, I've had a lot of people asking about the Nolo bait. Now this is actually a container of the Nolo bait. Nolo bait is a natural biological insecticide, and it's actually a spore that only affects grasshoppers. It won't bother any other insects. It won't kill spiders, it won't kill ants, it won't harm people or pets. It just kills grasshoppers. It won't hurt caterpillars. It's just specifically for grasshoppers. And the best way to use the Nolo bait is, again, when the food source of the grasshoppers is starting to dry up. So when you're looking at that vacant lot next door, or the field out back where the grasshoppers are actually coming from, if that field is still green and lush, it's not going to be very effective on controlling the grasshoppers, because they have this lush, beautiful grass, or these big, giant, delicious weeds to eat, and so they'll be eating those. But until their food source starts to turn brown, until it starts to dry up, the Nolo bait's really not very effective. So generally, when spring slows down and the warmth of summer starts up and we're not getting rain anymore, that's the best time to use the Nolo bait, because that's when the food source is really going to start to dry up. The Nolo bait's very sensitive to moisture also, so when you're applying it, you either want to do 10-foot wide bands out in the areas where you can try and get the grasshoppers infected with this spore before they actually get to your yard, or do little bait stations out there. You can make little bait stations. Make sure it's something covered. A lot of people use like a gallon milk bottle, cut the bottom off the gallon milk bottle, put the Nolo bait inside, so it's kind of protected from the weather as well too. But the Nolo bait has to stay protected from the weather, otherwise it's not going to work very well. And it takes about 2 to 3 weeks once the grasshoppers actually eat the Nolo bait before it starts to slow them down. Basically, it's like giving them a really bad case of the flu, and so they become very lethargic. They don't hop around as much. They don't They don't eat. It makes them so that they're not hungry, so they don't eat your plants. They're definitely not as aggressive as they were. And then as the grasshoppers die from the spore, the other grasshoppers will eat the grasshoppers that have been infected, and then it'll spread the spore even more. And so it's multi-generational, and it can even last from year to year. So this is a type of bait that's again natural, biological, and won't hurt any other targeted insects. I mean, it only works on grasshoppers, and so it won't bother any of the beneficial insects. But it does take some time, and it's not one that I would use in my vegetable garden to try and stop the grasshoppers. You have to get them infected with it before things get going, and it'll do a really good job and work for many generations.